All right. All right. So thank you so much for checking out Mentor the Beast. I'm your host, Lon Wilkinson. I'm very excited to have our guest for today, Silvino Diaz. This man is an attorney, a mentor, a speaker. And well, I'm just going to let you explain to everyone what it is that you do and how you help serve everyone.
Thank you, Lon. Thank you for having me on your program. I'm very excited to speak with you and your community today. Like you were saying, I am mainly an attorney and I work in the entertainment field. So I work mostly with the music industries, tech, digital creators, film, TV industries, in different types of legal and commercial projects, anything from the corporate setup of a business entity for the operations of a business, the protection and vindication of intellectual property rights, and anything that has to do with contracts, negotiations, and covenants, even fighting those in courts. So I do a little bit of everything when it comes to the commercial side of entertainment law, and I'm happy to serve my clients on a daily basis. And I'm thankful that you've invited me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important because I believe that most people, they're excited to do the work. You want to go out there, you want to sing, you want to perform, you want to be a podcaster, you want to be, whatever creative it is. And you do the work and you get out there and you become good, but you don't protect yourself or you don't set a foundation for yourself up. And as if you actually make it, and then you have to start doing the business side of things, but you didn't set any of that business side up, then everything starts kind of falling apart. So what suggestions do you have for people to properly lay a foundation so that they will be able to move forward and expand themselves in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. And dealing mainly with creative industries, and it could be anything from like a music performer who's on tour, or a video game designer who is developing a new game on a given platform, or even a tech company who is developing technologies that have proprietary material that needs to be protected. At the end of the day, when we talk about creative industries, the issue is the same. It's a large part of your productive assets are going to be coming from materials that originate from the human imagination, whether that's a song, whether that's a design, a trademark, an invention, or a patentable product. So there's going to be things that you're going to need to protect beforehand. And I think one of the things that first creators maybe get wrong, or perhaps they get a little ahead of themselves, is that they immediately want to take things to the market. They want to share it with their communities. They want to share it with the world. And for some intellectual property assets, you want to make sure that you have protection first, because for some, like for example, patents, if you disclose them to the public, then you may lose the rights to get a patent. And for other intellectual property assets like copyrights and works like music, visual works, if you share it to the public without first having it protected, you run the risk of having someone potentially either infringe of your work on your work, or even plagiarize it, meaning they're taking your work and saying that it's theirs. So there's a lot of planning that goes into it, and it's always going to require a team, right? You're always going to need to have a business consultant or a legal consultant. There needs to be finances involved to making sure that the project is self-sustaining, and also marketing elements, public relations, digital marketing. So for anybody who is working on a venture or wants to start on an idea or project, there's going to come a point when you're going to need more people on your side. So I think that the best thing that we can do for ourselves is set ourselves up with great teams of people who support us and know what they're doing, and help catch us in those areas where we're not necessarily the experts.
No, I think that's great advice. And I think you probably see this, and tell me if this resonates with you, is people moving into a space where they've been previously an employee, right? But they have this creative idea, this thing that they want to do.
Yeah.
And now they're having to move over into, now I'm an entrepreneur, now I'm a business person, I'm on the other side, but they don't really understand what that's like, because what they've done so far up to this point is got paid for every little bit of work they did.
Yeah.
And so then they go over and say, oh, I'm going to do this thing. And they want it to pop off real quick because they almost, oh, I'm just going to quit what I'm doing and I'm going to jump over here. And they're not just undercapitalized, they're not capitalized at all. So what you're talking about, you're going to need a team. This is all going to cost money. You're going to, everything that you're talking about is going to cost money. How do you suggest what someone should do and how they should start rearranging their thought process so that they're capitalized properly? So when they start reaching out to someone like yourself and these teams of people to help them, that they have a goal, they have a mark.
Yeah, that's a great observation. And it's one of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs who, like you mentioned, are coming out of a situation where they're employed, right? That they perform a work, they provide a product, and they get paid by someone who has already set up the deal with them, whether it's a salary, whether it's a commission, whether it's an independent contractor payment. And so, and I think the phrase that you used is very key. There needs to be a reworking of your mindset, because I think that now, especially with, all the tools available to us on social media, we are constantly, especially myself, that I am in the entrepreneurial space, I am constantly looking at ads, for example, on YouTube and on Instagram, of people who are advertising, hey, be your own boss, get out of the rat race of the 9 to 5, get financial independence. And while that seems like a lofty goal, and it certainly is something that most people would like to aspire to, when we jump into that space of, well, we're no longer working for someone that is paying us to provide services, now we're actually depending on ourselves to actually get the clients. Those are different hats, right? You could be a great innovative inventor, and you can have great ideas. You can even patent them and secure the rights to them. Find a company that is going to take that to market, or you can do it yourself. And that means that now you have to think about not only the product that you're creating, but who's going to consume the product, and where are they, and how am I going to reach those people, and what decisions are they making as part of their decision-making process to purchase this product, and who do I need to bring into my team that I have to motivate them to either become salespeople, to become marketing people, to become my HR personnel. So there's a lot of things both internally with you and your staff and externally with you and your market that you have to take into account to make the business successful, that has absolutely nothing to do with the product that you're selling. And so when you get into that mindset, now you're thinking, wait a minute, there's tools and resources and skills that I need to learn that have nothing to do with what I thought was going to make me a good business person, which was creating a product or service that I'm familiar with. And that's when, coaches like you come in. That's when perhaps professional services like myself come in, which we're in here to fill in those gaps. Because at the end of the day, most businesses fail. And I think that what can be attributed to that failure is just lack of proper management and planning. It's not even it's not that they have a bad idea or that they have a bad product or even that they had capital. Some people come into the entrepreneurial market with maybe an investor or maybe some money that they saved up, but they have no idea of what it means to potentially budget and execute and implement those budgets successfully so they can render results. So there's a lot of hats that go into entrepreneurship, and it's not necessarily having anything to do with your core competency.
A lot of people, if they have not done business before, they don't understand what the word investing even means into themselves, into the business, and then understanding that is going to yield a return over time, which is what you're talking about. This is going to be a return over time. This is not going to be an instant thing. Like I go to McDonald's, I hand them money, they hand me a burger, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have the misconception that they're going to take their idea and they're going to put it out there, whether it's a song or whatever. Well, I'm just going to throw it out there and people are going to start loading money into my bank account. And that is not at all. It's like, not only are they not going to load money into your bank account, somebody's going to steal your song because you didn't even get it trademarked. You didn't do your due diligence.
And on that point, one of the things that you have to, as an entrepreneur, get really good at is, for example, most entrepreneurs, they may not necessarily have the capital themselves to invest in their own project. So they need someone that they need to sell them on that vision. And while entrepreneurs may be very good at selling the vision, like they can walk up to the stage and do the TED talk and talk about all the things that make us feel good about the product or service that they want to bring in and wanting us to invest. When you find that person who's willing to invest, or that company who's willing to invest in your project, you have to set up the expectations correctly with them, because there's a lot of unsophisticated investors who are more than willing to throw money at your project. But usually, like you said, when people invest money, they are under this impression that, wait, if the business doesn't do well, I'm going to ask them for my money back because the business did not do well. And it's like, wait a minute, this is not a loan, right? When you invest in a company, you have to understand that you may lose your investment. And sometimes both entrepreneurs that want that investment and the investors that are eager to contribute that capital, both of them have no idea of what the actual deal structure should be. Like, for example, the entrepreneur is under the impression that he can go back and ask for more money. And the investor may be under the impression that if the business doesn't do well, that they can ask for their money back. And so it's always good to be properly counseled on both sides as it pertains to the deal of the business. Because sometimes I see things on paper, when I look at the agreement, I'm like, wait a minute, this is an investment, but it's written as it was a loan, but it's not a loan because there's no promissory note, there's no maturity date. You're investing in a business as partners, so it seems like both of the parties had no idea what they were getting into, and that's just a recipe for failure automatically.
Absolutely. So if someone had an investor and they had their idea, would you suggest they both come to you, sit down, and let you or your team can walk them through what this process looks like?
Yes. So EPGD Business Law is a full service entrepreneurs law firm. So we have a litigation division for disputes. We have a corporate division for structuring entities, sale, purchases of businesses. We have an intellectual property division for protection and vindication of intellectual property assets like copyrights and trademarks and trade secrets. Franchising for purchases of franchisings and other licensed businesses. Trust and estates, real estate. So we're quite complete in the sense that all the needs that an entrepreneur is gonna be faced with, we can potentially help them at some point. When it comes to sitting the parties down, there's a few nuances to go into this, because, for example, when the parties sit down to decide on whether they want to get into a business, they may decide that they're going to form a new company, right? That is a new company that's made up by both of these parties. Okay. And so at that point, we can be brought in to represent the company that's made. But in that sense, we represent the entity, not necessarily the individual investors. However, if we come in representing, for example, the venture capitalist, the person who is investing, then we're on their side. And so one of the things that is always really important for us as entrepreneurial attorneys is that we got to let the parties know, hey, we are representing the business. That means that we don't represent you directly in your personal capacity should you have a dispute amongst yourselves, or we're actually representing one of the parties. So we recommend that the other side get counsel so that they can be properly represented. And sometimes the confusion happens where we may represent the company, but obviously companies are not human. So the person that comes into the firm and walks in and signs the engagement letter is a person. But they tell us, hey, I thought that you were representing me. Can't you now sue my partner because they're not filling in on their compliance or their requirements? And we have to have that conversation as well. So we always like to be clear that representing the company is not representing the parties individually. And if we represent one party, the other side should equally be represented, because it just puts everybody on a better footing, and the process of coming to an agreement is way more seamless. Because as you can imagine, if two parties are just going back and forth, there's a lot of emotion. And so we help navigate.
So I think what would help everybody is walk me through, if I were coming in on both sides. Let's say I'm an entrepreneur, I've got an idea, and if it's different, let's say, I've got this idea for a coaching business, or I've got, I'm a singer or songwriter, whatever it is, and I want to do this, but I need an investor. Obviously, I don't want the investor to come in with me on the same day that I come in to meet you. I want to have some kind of heads up about what's going on, most especially if I want you to represent me or my company or whatever it is. So can you walk me through what the steps would be if I came in not knowing anything, and you're going to educate me on that? And then do you represent an investor that doesn't have anybody to invest with, but maybe you have a whole lot of people that clearly need investing? Maybe they could come to you and it would be a good investment for them because you already know these people and what their setup looks like. So could you walk me through both sides of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Very quickly on the second question, yes, we do. We do represent our clients in helping them find businesses that they can invest for the purchasing of business, in the same way that we represent clients who want to sell their business and need to find a buyer. So that's absolutely something. Yeah, so that's absolutely something that we do as part of our services. As far as the second question, first question, I'm going to put an example. So let's say that you're walking into our office and you have a podcast business that you want to find someone to invest in, and you don't have legal representations. It's the first time we're speaking, and you want to kind of just get the lay of the land in terms of what do I need to set up first in order to make the investment attractive for someone. So the first thing I'll probably ask is whether you're incorporated, right? Whether you have, for the project, set up a business entity that helps you separate your individual personhood from that of the business. Because let's say, for example, that as part of the podcast venture, there is a dispute. There is someone who wants to sue you. There is someone who wants to lay a claim against the business for some reason. You want to make sure that they're not going against you, Lon, personally, and they go against the business, because you, Lon, personally, maybe you may have other businesses, you may have other assets, you may have a spouse, you may have children, you may have savings accounts that you don't want them to be encumbered should anything happen to the business, right? So we want to immediately set up a limited corporate responsibility for the business. And most of the time, since this is a relatively simple and rudimentary exercise, is going on to the Department of State and getting something incorporated, most of the business already have that underway. But if they do, it's really not enough to kind of properly set up the entire business, right? You want to make sure that you have your social security for the business, your employer identification number. You want to make sure that you have an agreement for the business, meaning the operating agreement, the rules of the game for that business. You want to set up a corporate banking account, a company banking account. You may want referrals to other accountants, to other professionals. So if the business is not set up in that sense, we want to make sure that we get it to that point, that the structure that underlies anything that's going on operations-wise is solid, right, business-wise. Once that's set up, then we got to talk about the operations of the business. And if we're talking about a podcast business, then we're talking about media, entertainment, and we're talking about intellectual property. So one of the things that we're going to want to discuss firsthand is, do you have the rights to the work that you're creating, right? Are you the owner of the audio-visual assets, meaning the episodes, any sound clips, any graphics, any flyers, any indicators of origin that you're using in promoting and marketing your materials? And sometimes the podcaster may have those things already set up. Most of the times they know that they need to, but they don't necessarily have the copyright certificates for their work. So we want to make sure, listen, hey, we got to be getting the rights, the certificates for the rights to those works. Now, when it comes to podcasting, there's an interesting element. Usually, you don't podcast alone, right? You may have a guest, or you may have a production crew. You may have a lighting technician. You may have a sound technician. You may have a director, a sound engineer, a producer. You may have a post-production specialist. So all those people are contributing creatively to the work. So that potentially makes them co-authors of the work, and that may grant them rights to the intellectual property that's being created. So in addition to discussing who is owning the rights to the work and whether you have the copyrights, we may also want to have a discussion about whether you have agreements in place with that staff, with those contractors, so that they can convey those works to you as the business. And obviously, when they convey those works, that's going to need to require an exchange of value, right? You're going to have to pay them for them to give away their rights. So there may be a payment that you may have to have with them. As it pertains to intellectual property, we want to make sure that that's discussed, after we discuss the company element. Following that, there may be trademarks, right? You may have the name of the podcast. You may have a logo. You may have a sound. You may have a phrase, a slogan. You want to make sure that you're trademarking that. So if anybody else is using that in the marketing connection with their goods and services, you have priority over them, and you can sue them, and you can send cease and desist letters. And in addition to that, there's podcasting equipment. There's computers, there's hard disks, there is production equipment, there is studio. We want to make sure that that's properly insured, so that if anything happened to it, you are not necessarily going to be fronting those costs out of pocket. So anyhow, I don't want to overburden or make our head spin, but those are some of the conversations that we're going to have initially with our clients to make sure that the business is set up, and then we can have a conversation about how it is that you want to bring in the investor. And the first thing that I'm going to say is, have you had a conversation with them? Because the worst thing that you can do is have someone show interest in your project and then you immediately send them an agreement and we're like, wait, we haven't discussed terms. You want to make sure that your client has the opportunity to speak in a one-to-one manner with the investor. Like, hey, what do you want to get out of this? What is a good number for you? How long do you want to be involved in this? What rights, what responsibilities? Are you going to be bringing in anything other than investment capital like liquid funds? And so those are some of the few items that we go through with our clients when we have that initial conversation.
That's awesome, man. I think people have very unrealistic expectations when they're not educated on what the process is, right? Yeah. And so I think there's this idea that I'm going to get into this for nothing, and then I'm just going to jump in it and people are going to throw money at me again, and it's just not that way. And I think the biggest thing that would help people is understanding the pain point, because if the pain point is big enough, then you will take action to keep anything from happening. So could you go over what would happen if they didn't, like an example maybe of a client that you have, or just, this is what happens to most people, right, that don't do this properly, so that they understand what they could potentially lose if they're not set up and have a good solid foundation.
Sure. And I think that especially, in my area of business, I deal a lot with creators. And continuing with the example of a podcaster, the attractiveness to start your own content and generate a community is very enticing because you see so many people do it, right? All you have to do is just open up your Instagram and you see
the successful ones, right?
And so you think, I can do it, right? If someone can do it, I can do it. But then if you've never done it, like if you haven't been involved in media at all, well, there's a lot more that goes into it than just buying good equipment and having a proper setup. You really have to first find your voice. You have to first find what your style is and who you are and what it is that you want to communicate. And I think a lot of people first, especially when it comes to these media projects, they get so caught up in the production element of it first. Like, I got to first buy this, get this studio, hire this super expensive talent that's going to make my look be as professional as it can be, when all you need to do is just really put yourself out there first and start finding out what it is that you want to speak about, what it is that you want to say. And you will learn that it really doesn't take a lot of resources initially to get the ball rolling. And when it comes to this oversaturated media market, you really want to set yourself out as a differentiator. And if you haven't had experience with media, with arts, with communications, then that learning curve is going to be a very, very costly learning curve. And in that point, you may get very, very, very disappointed. You may get dissuaded and you may just quit. So what I would say is, if you're just starting and you don't know how you want to get into it, you first need to find very low cost elements to find your voice and your style. And that's what I did, because I'm a podcaster myself. I'm a social media personality. And the way that I got into it, even before my very first podcast, like I started doing this years before my very first podcast, I would just post videos on Snapchat and Instagram stories. And that's how I learned that my public wanted a podcast. They were the ones that suggested it to me. Once I got thousands of followers on social media, they were like, oh, why don't you do a podcast? And it was me who initially said, I don't want to. It's going to be like a lot of time. I kind of just enjoy doing these videos. So if you first give yourself a chance to find your voice, you're going to find where the need is. It may not even be a podcast. You may not even need to do the whole setup and rigmarole. You can reverse engineer success by first starting at what the people need, not at what you want.
Got it. So what you're saying is try something out that's small and try to be consistent with it. And then once people are commenting,
absolutely.
Then you can figure out what to do.
I think that if you're just consistently good, you will be eventually excellent. Like, you don't have to be consistently excellent in terms of doing something stellar 10 out of 10 every day. You probably will get 10 out of 10, maybe 1 every 10 times. The other times you may get a 7 out of 10, an 8 out of 10. So consistently good is way better than occasionally excellent, and consistently
Sure.
good will take you to eventually excellent. And I will tell you this, I don't have a metric for this, but I follow a lot of social media content, a lot of social media creators, because I'm in this space. And I can tell you, I guarantee every single person that I have seen work on a media project consistently, they have gotten success, they've gotten viral, they've gotten the followers that they wanted, they've gotten the reach and communities that they wanted. Even if I don't agree with the content, even if I don't like the content, even if I think it's not necessarily that good, consistently good is going to take you places. And so that's something that I try to preach to myself every day, because one of the things that I don't like about social media and about the way that social media is programming the creation of content, right? The medium is the message, is that if you go on TikTok and you go on Instagram, there's influencers now that are teaching you how to be an influencer. So this is like how meta it has gotten. Yeah. And they're always preaching consistency. No, you got to be consistent. You got to publish 1 to 2 reels a day. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got to follow trending audio. And listen, as creators, as artists and creative people, you're not always on, right? You're not always going to be on. You're not always going to want to turn on the camera and do the thing. What I try and recommend is find a thing that you can do consistently that is not going to be a burden on you emotionally, right? If you're a dancer,
that's a great piece of advice.
If you're a dancer, for example, you may not have the emotional and creative wherewithal to come up with a new choreography every day, but you may have, for example, a 30-second video of you maybe failing on a step that you can use that, and you can tie that up with a motivational message, and it's a low margin sort of content that can help you get on that consistency. Because the thing about consistency is not that we want to force people to try and be creative even when they're not emotionally in that space. Sure. What we want to do is just set up discipline. Like an athlete, like you're saying, you're a runner. I'm a runner as well. I run every day. Athletes, you got to train, even when you don't want to. So find something that you can consistently work on that is not going to be an emotional drag on you. And when you have your ups, because you're going to be euphoric sometimes, take advantage of those and be really creative. Then when you're down, just find a way to just hold the line until you can get back to that high.
Now, on your point of just getting in there and getting it going, at what point does someone need to start? Like they say, okay, I kind of found my voice. I see what I want to do. When do they need to come see you, and how do they need to budget for that so that they know, okay, this is when, now's the time?
So ideally, they need to want to get something started officially. They need to have already published that first episode. They need to have already maybe produced it and not published it. So the thing needs to be already in course. And I think there's a big misconception when it comes to legal services that you have to have like a big legal need to maybe tap into someone. We have, for example, our initial consultations are free of charge. So you can literally call our office, schedule an appointment, and ask to speak with me for half an hour for that initial consultation, which will be free of charge. We also have paid consultations that are a bit longer, that are video conferenced. So you have that option as well, even after that initial call. In addition to that, we have also subscription plans so that you can just write us, schedule a video conference, email us, so that you can maintain, if you don't know what the budget is going to be and you just want to, get your feet wet, we also have those plans as well. I think that also one of the things that once you're getting going, you're going to want to have that right-hand person. And that right-hand person should have some form of training in business, right? They could be an accountant, they may have a marketing major, they may be involved in finances, they may be a law student or maybe an attorney. You're going to want to have a person that you are going to want to maybe have unload some of the more tedious business-like activities so that you can focus on staying creative, doing your work, and having someone that you can bounce off ideas with. And bringing in a team together, it's going to help out in facilitating that relationship with a professional, because they're going to be speaking our language and vice versa. But as it pertains to when you can come and knock on our door, as soon as you get the idea that you want to move forward with something seriously, you can definitely request a consultation with us. And like I said, we do offer free consultations for initial inquiries. And there's a lot that we can discuss in half an hour.
So as soon as somebody really decides that they want to get serious, they need to call you, because you got that free consultation. You can guide them and say, hey, I need you to put this together, that together, and this is what it's going to cost you. This is the timeline. This is the subscription or straight payment or whatever it is. You'll guide them through that. Right. Absolutely. So that's perfect. where can people reach out to you, and where can they look at kind of some of your work, and how do they get to your podcast so they can start following what it is that you do? And what do you talk about on your podcast, by the way?
Got it. So this logo you see right here, EPGD Business Law, that's our law firm. We are based in Miami. Like I said, we have a whole bunch of departments tailored towards entrepreneurs. Myself specifically, I'm the director of the Entertainment Law Group. And the Entertainment Law Group is called Starving Artists. So you can reach us at our Instagram at Starve Artist. We publish content every day. We're publishing videos, tutorials, courses. We just published a course on personal finances for artists. We have another course on negotiating artist agreements. We have a Discord server where we do a digital interactive library with templates, models, guides, tutorials as well, videos. We have our YouTube channel, which is Starving Artist. You can look us up as Starving Artist, where we're publishing videos, usually analyses of different topics related to entertainment law. For example, when there's a big lawsuit, we analyze the lawsuit, different trending topics, we talk about them. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, Starving Artist, on LinkedIn. It's the Starving Artist newsletter. It's weekly updates for artists, creatives, and entrepreneurs. Like I said, that's on LinkedIn. So we try to have our tentacles on social media as much as we can. And in our website, starveartist.com, you can see all of our services. There's all the links to our subscription plans, our courses, and our blog. We have over 100 articles on different topics for entertainment artists and entrepreneurs. So yeah, that's a little bit about where you can find us.
All right, excellent. And I'll be linking all this into the comments. And man, that's awesome. So not only can they get a hold of you and get you to help them, they can also get the information, the knowledge they need to build the skill set. That's great.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Matt. Look, I really appreciate having you on here. Everybody go check him out. EPGD Business Law. Get yourself together. Mentor the Beast. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Lon. This has been great. I appreciate it. And we'll be in touch.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You got it. Have a wonderful day.
You too.